Thank you, and good morning and welcome to the Standards Committee, 20th of January. Okay, can I take any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Oliver James.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, are there any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests, please, that we need to note?
Yes, Chair. I'd like some advice from Tracy, if possible. It's item 9, the vexatious complaint appeal. And I would probably normally know of any complaints going on in that area, and also when I was the cabinet member myself, and we had issues about vexatious complaints there. I'm just wondering whether I need to declare an interest.
Councillor, I think you do actually, and I would advise you that's possibly a personal and prejudicial interest. I don't myself, I've only just received the papers from the local authority on this and I haven't had time to consider them myself, but I think if you're in any way, if you know the person who's the subject of the vexatious complaint, I would declare a personal and prejudicial interest and leave the meeting, because I don't quite know how this will develop in terms of the hearing.
Yeah.
So when if you declare personal and prejudicial interest in that, you may know the person, and when it comes to that agenda item, if you leave.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. So I declare an item personal and prejudicial interest in item 9.
Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. That's helpful. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Graham. Okay, so the next item is to receive and approve the minutes of a couple of recent meetings. Now, I've got a small problem with 2 of them, which is Wednesday, the 5th of October. I wasn't actually personally present, so I wonder if anybody that was at that meeting would be prepared to just propose those minutes, please.
I propose them, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Everybody happy that that's an accurate reflection of the meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any dissenters. And I think similarly, the meeting of the 7th of October, which I think was a special meeting, wasn't it? Again, myself and Margaret Williams weren't at that. So again, can I have somebody to propose that's an accurate record, please?
I propose again, Chair.
Thank you. Everybody happy? Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. And then, thank you. I think there was one more, which is the special meeting of the 25th of November. I was at that one, and again, I'm happy that's an accurate record. Is everybody else happy?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. So that takes us, I think, to agenda item 4. Tracy, is this you, the Public Service Ombudsman letter?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So all chairs of Standard Committee were sent the letter, which is attached at page 11 by the Ombudsman. I thought it would be worthwhile bringing it to the committee's attention. 3 things that I just wanted to highlight. Firstly, that the Ombudsman will now be sharing a standalone decision notice with a view to the monitoring officer possibly sharing that with the committee as deemed appropriate. Many of you may recall that we did raise this issue many years ago with the Ombudsman in terms of what we could actually report to the committee when complaints are dealt with by the Ombudsman. You'll see in the next agenda item, it is very limited in terms of what we actually report to the committee. That has been the Ombudsman's line in previous years. So it will be quite interesting to see these standalone decisions that they now publish or send to us, and to what extent we can publish those in more detail in that next agenda item. I've only seen 2. So Swansea have received 2 of these new decision notices. I haven't really had time to deal with them because they've literally come in the last few weeks, but I'm quite pleased at the content of them. So we will be looking, it's probably something that I will pick up with the chair and the vice chair in terms of how we amend the report that we take to the Standards Committee, just outlining all the complaints and the Ombudsman's decision in relation to those complaints. So that's something I'll pick up separately, but it may be that our next agenda item will be changed going forward. So that's very promising. I'd also remind you that the Ombudsman is no longer publishing the Code of Conduct casebook that I used to bring to the Standards Committee. They stopped doing that in April 2021. What they're now doing is putting any decisions. They're still going on their website. They're going under a findings section. I did have a quick look this morning to see if there was anything for Swansea. There are some maladministration cases, but I couldn't see any Code of Conduct cases. So I'll keep an eye on that and report that to you as well. And then secondly, the Ombudsman has highlighted the new way of dealing with complaints. So you'll recall that the previous system was that the Ombudsman would notify myself as monitoring officer and notify the person being complained of that a complaint had been made, and that they would look into the circumstances of that complaint and get back to the complainant and myself. They're no longer doing that. What they are now doing, as soon as they receive a complaint, they will look at it initially. They will not send that preliminary letter out advising us that a complaint has been made. And they will inform the relevant parties at the point where they either decline to investigate or they decide to investigate. It seems to be working well for the Ombudsman. It's certainly speeding up the timeliness of their responses in terms of Code of Conduct complaints. The only one thing I would say from a monitoring officer perspective, whilst I'm supportive that it's speeding up their response to complaints, it does prevent the monitoring officer actually having that early discussion with the person being complained of in terms of liaising with the Ombudsman and sending forward documentation. But that's a new way of working. That's the way they're dealing with it, and they seem to be quite pleased at the new way. And then finally, there is reference in the letter to the National Forum for Standards Committees. I think, Mike, and you may need to correct me on this, but I think the meeting has been arranged for next Friday. So
Correct.
That is a Pan Wales chair meeting of all chairs of Standards Committee. So there's reference to that in their letter, and there's also a fleeting reference to how they are expecting members to rely on member-member dispute resolutions if there's any member-member disputes within local authorities, and of course the importance of training for councillors, and that councillors undertake any training, particularly around the Code of Conduct. So I just thought it was important. It is quite an important letter, particularly in relation to their new way of working and also these standalone decisions. So it'd be quite interesting to see how we can report those going forward. I've nothing further to add, Chair. Happy to take any questions. I would say there is one recommendation on page 8, so I would refer you to that recommendation. It is just to consider that letter and note the minor changes to the Ombudsman's procedure in dealing with Code of Conduct complaints.
Thank you, Tracy. Any questions for Tracy?
It's actually regarding the meeting. It's Janet. It's actually regarding the meeting that she'll be going to as chair next week, Mike. I just wondered, would you be reporting back to this committee on what that meeting is, what it entailed? Is there anything like that to keep the committee up to date with those meetings?
Yeah, more than happy to, Janet. As you're probably aware, it's the first one, I think, certainly
Yes.
Since I've been there. I think it's the first one ever. Since I've been on the committee anyway, certainly the first one. So it's a little bit of an unknown territory, but I think we welcome it. I'm looking forward to it. They did try to do it, I think, before Christmas, but it was all a bit short notice and not many people could attend. So in my view, rightly, they postponed until Friday of next week when there seems to be a better attendance. It's online, so I'm intending to attend online. So yes, it's slightly unknown territory, but I'm more than happy to feedback, and I'll give some thought as to, is that just a verbal update, but more than happy. I think it's welcome, and indeed the letter from the new Ombudsman. I think the Ombudsman is going to be represented, if not personally attended next week. I think she's going to be represented. So that's a good sign as well, as far as I'm concerned.
And my second question is, are monitoring officers going to be there as well?
I don't know, Tracy. I'm not aware that you are, but I don't actually know that.
No, if I can just the procedure that's being adopted at the moment, because there will be quite a number of people present at this meeting, they decided that they would do it regionally. So it's not myself attending the National Forum, it will be my counterpart from Pembrokeshire Council. She's volunteered to go just on the basis, it was basically a division of responsibilities amongst the monitoring officers in South East Wales. So she's agreed to go on. We may rotate it, Janet. It may be that I'll go to the next one. I don't know. We haven't thought that far ahead yet, but it will be my counterpart in Pembrokeshire.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Janet. Okay, so we have the recommendation. Everybody happy?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 5, Tracy, is an update on Community Town Council training plans. That's a verbal update. Again, is that yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You will remember that the community and town councils have a new duty under the Local Government Election Wales Act to publish their training plans. They had to publish those training plans by the 5th of November of last year. So we did write to all the community councils asking them to forward their training plans to us with a view to bringing a report to the committee. Grateful to Alison for keeping track of all the responses that we've had, because they've come in somewhat piecemeal, but to date we've had 19 out of the 24 councils. So we have training plans for 19, so we've had emails from 19 of those councils. We'll chase those that are remaining with a view to bringing a report back to the next standard committee in terms of updating you as to what training plans various councils have, and so that you can comment on those training plans and what sort of training you think they should be looking at.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Any questions for Tracy? Not seen any hands. Tracy, thank you. Item
sorry,
6.
I think does Margaret want to say something? She's on mute.
Oh, sorry, Margaret.
Sorry,
I can't see your hands.
sorry. If Tracy remembers, I did raise previously an issue resulting from a case that we heard on the committee about financial training. Is there any way, or has anything been done to ensure that financial training is included?
Sorry, Chair, if I can come in. I think that was the purpose of writing out, because what happened was we had that conversation. We were going to write out to the community council saying, well, what training do you do around financial training? And then this new duty came in. So we thought we'd actually merge send out an email saying, well, let's see your training plans. Let's see what you actually do. Bring a report to the committee so you can look at what training they actually highlight in their training plans. And then we'd have a discussion about that, and then a further discussion about whether or not we needed to go back to the community council saying, well, you know, that you haven't specifically referenced financial training. What financial training do you give? And possibly also consideration of whether members would like to have meetings with the community clerks of community councils as well in terms of what training they do provide. So it was just a coincidence that the new duty came in under the Local Government Elections Wales Act, so we decided to do it that way. Further report, and then we'll decide what we need to do after you've seen the training plans.
That's great. Thank you ever so much for clarifying. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret, and apologies I didn't see your hand. Apologies. Okay, everybody happy to move on? I'm not seeing any more hands. Okay, thank you. And then item 6, Tracy, please, the breach of the code of conduct, complaints made to the Ombudsman.
Yeah, as you can see, very limited information there, but there were 3 complaints in relation to Mumbles Community Council and 1 in relation to Pennard. All of those complaints the Ombudsman has decided not to investigate. And as I've said in relation to the previous agenda item, we will be looking at a new way of presenting the information that is provided to the Standards Committee going forward.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, could I raise a question? And it really links back into the training that we were talking about last time. Although they're not investigating, is it something that there's any recommendations about looking at the possible training needs or anything that could be recommended by the Standards Committee, and nothing at all?
Chair, if I can come in there. No, there were no recommendations. My recollection is that they simply, the Ombudsman simply responds that they've chosen not to investigate for whatever the reason may be. Usually there's no direct evidence of a breach of the code of conduct. I can't remember them specifically, but that's normally what happens. If there is a recommendation in there, and particularly if there's a recommendation for me as a monitoring officer, I would pick that up and deal with it.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Janet. Mark?
Forgive me, because I'm new to all of this, but and I think I get what you were trying to get across there now, Tracy. But if the PSOW are not investigating, basically, does that mean that there is no case to answer, and therefore the person who, the member of the public who has complained, will have had something back in writing to say that, you know, there is no case to answer, so to speak. So basically, that's it, done and dusted. Is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. What will happen is the Ombudsman or a member of the Ombudsman's office will investigate the complaint. They will use a two-stage test. Is there direct evidence of breach of the code of conduct? If they decide, and the public interest test, if they decide that there isn't a breach or there's no direct evidence, then the person making the complaint will be written to, and they will be told that the Ombudsman is not investigating it because there's no direct evidence, for example, and the person complained of will also be written to, and I will be written to. So that then is the end of that matter. I think they can ask for a review, but I think that's very rare. So that is usually the end of the matter. Yes.
So no case to answer probably isn't the terminology that they would use, Mark, if I understand correctly, because as Tracy said, there's a two-stage test. So the public interest, is it in the public interest for the Ombudsman to look further is a separate test, I think. Okay, everybody happy to move on? Thank you. So item 7 is the work plan. Now I can see that was at the discussed at the last meeting that I wasn't unfortunately able to attend. Tracy, is there anything for us to do on this today, or is it just a standing item for information?
It's a standing item for information. Obviously, you've got the topics that are on the 20th of January, today's meeting. February, we do need to have a discussion with group leaders, and we do need to focus on group leaders' duties because we do need to include that in your annual report. So what I would be looking at doing is possibly setting up a meeting, possibly a special meeting in February, where we can discuss how the group leaders have complied with their new duty under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act. That meeting may take quite some time, so that's why I'm suggesting we might look at a special meeting, and we need to make sure that the group leaders are available for that. Dispensation form I will try and do. There is one additional item I wouldn't mind adding to the agenda for any February meeting, Chair, and that's because and that's relating to gifts and hospitality. There is a lot of monitoring officer communication at the moment around the limit that is set for gifts and hospitality. Now in Swansea, that's currently £25. So anything £25 or over, members have to declare. So if they get a gift, hospitality amounting to that amount, they have to declare it. So there is a discussion as to whether or not we should standardise the amount that is set for gifts and hospitality across Wales, something that the Ombudsman I think is quite keen to do. So there's been a lot of emails flying around between monitoring officers around what the level should be and standardising that level. So I would like to bring it to Standards Committee so that they can consider it and possibly make a recommendation then as to whether or not our limit needs to be changed.
Yeah, happy with that, Tracy. Thank you. And I think you're right. There's a couple of things there for me. Standardisation. If there's any way we could benchmark against other public sector organisations, that might be useful information. You know, police, for example. And the other thing, it would be helpful to know when it was last reviewed, because inflation is what inflation is, isn't it? But yeah, more than happy to add that to our next meeting. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions for Tracy before I move on? Not seeing any hands. Okay, thank you. So the next item is, before we get into the last item for today, It's a proposal that we exclude members of the public before we go any further. I'm not going to read out the proposal because I think we're all familiar with it. Is everybody happy to support that recommendation? Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so Councillor Thomas, thank you. I think you declared an interest, so this is probably an appropriate time. So thank you for doing that. So today, that's probably an appropriate time if I ask you to leave us, please. And Alison, if I can ask you please to stop recording.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop the recording now.
Thank you.